We'll continue on now. Next up on our lineup is Mr. Jim Rindt, another person from the Sheboygan area who is going to give us his take on the Chicago Northwestern Lakeshore Division, some interesting angles and oddities.
All right, well, I'm going to be starting off here with this little title slide. Most of what you'll be seeing will be located within Sheboygan County. That's been where a lot of my focus of historical research on the Northwestern has been. But over the years, I've received a couple of interesting collections and bought some interesting slides that were, I guess, somewhat of a novelty nature for this area. I've been blessed to put them all together here into one collection of interesting things. So with a little luck, we'll try to keep this to the right amount of time, and we'll start off here. So first thing you're going to see is the old Highway 141 overpass with a northbound passenger train, which was unidentified other than that this is 1954, heading up to along Lakeshore Division. A rather long train. You can see it's a very green summer, so this is probably one full of fishermen and tourists heading, I would guess, all the way up into the Ashland or Bayfield area. As we go along, you'll see that I'm kind of following the line north from this point, and there'll be different time periods scattered throughout, just following the line north though. So our next stop is the town of Cedar Grove. This is a very old postcard photo I came across. Supposedly there's 21,000 pounds of cheese ready to be shipped on less than carload freight from Cedar Grove on the platform there. Now, in 1957, Cedar Grove had a considerable derailment that tore up the main line pretty badly north of Cedar Grove. And if you know anything of the landscape, the right-of-way is peaked up pretty high. And when cars derail there, they have a tendency to fall down into the ditch, and it takes a bit of an effort to get the big hook out and get the cars fixed. In fact, what's interesting is I came across an interesting photo of this, of them using the big hook to get it back together. But there was also an article about how in the meantime, they used the old right-of-way from the Milwaukee and Northern Electric Railway, or the TM for some of you, in the meantime, as sort of a shoe fly while they repaired the damage from the derailment. There was enough work going on and trains running that they needed to keep the line open. So they did just that. You can see here there was a considerable amount of wreckage in the ditch, and that was going to take some time to clear. Then again, when I was a child in January of, I believe it was 1977, at around 3 o'clock in the morning, a train came through and jumped the tracks. There was ice jammed into the crossing and caused the train to derail. And I believe there were somewhere in the neighborhood of 32 cars that were derailed. I don't remember the exact number. But this was a memorable thing for me because my grandfather called my mother up and said, "Hey, I'd like to take Jim to see the derailed train if that's okay, because they've got some interesting equipment coming here to pick up the cars and clear the right-of-way." And it was, if I remember correctly, it was about 15 to 20 degrees below zero that day. Everybody was shivering pretty hard. You can see here they're trying to get the wheels back on the track, and it didn't take terribly long before the first train managed to come through southbound. Quite an impressive feat considering how cold it was. They actually had some burn barrels going out there for the crew to walk over and warm their hands on. But Cedar Grove wasn't all derailments and cheese. We did occasionally have some interesting things come through. This is 1976, the northbound American Freedom train coming through town. I actually remember catching it when it was southbound as a child. I was 4 at the time. And if you see the car there on the corner, that's undoubtedly a rail fan who quickly pulled over and jumped out to get a good look. This is a train north of Cedar Grove and south of Sheboygan using one of the E6s that were originally intended for the city of Los Angeles mixed fleet with the Union Pacific. Occasionally that power would make its way north, and a lot of times the cars too that were painted for Union Pacific would make it up our way too in heavy traffic seasons. Once you reach Sheboygan, back in the late 1930s, This is a photo looking northbound of the interchange between the TM and the Northwestern for coal service. And the local, this person standing taking the photograph is standing right on this little interchange hook where they normally, I think it could hold about 8 cars as I understand it, which was about the limit of what they needed for dispersing coal up to that power plant at the time on the newly built Edgewater plant. Later on, it would be taken over in 1941. The Northwestern would sign a 99-year lease for the spur and would directly connect it to the main line. Here's 2 shots taken by Art Schaefer coming and going of the spur. Note the, as their nickname, Heffalumps, the old Baldwin re-engined EMD switchers. Road switchers, I should say. And for those of you who are old enough may remember when County PP and Sheboygan ran under a rather narrow deck there for the railroad. This would later be rebuilt in the 1980s, I believe around 1987. This is again another Art Schaefer shot. He actually took around 150 photos of this being rebuilt in 1987. At some point in time, I'll put together a show of that. Under that same crossing, this is 1956. This is a funeral train of 36 locomotives heading south to the scrapper. That was a Wally Neumeister shot, by the way. This is one that I found on eBay, a rather random shot, but it was in a grouping of small contact prints that were taken all along the line in Sheboygan. This is on the far south end of the yard, taken from underneath a tank car. Certainly an interesting angle, if nothing else. Taken probably in the late 1930s, I would think. Now this one is the Sheboygan Roundhouse, taken at approximately 1907. So this was even before they rebuilt the turntable to an 80-foot length. Seems a little grassy from what I would have expected, but the Northwestern always was cheap and wasted nothing. So here's an R1 running out from the roundhouse out onto the turntable, ready to go to work. Not necessarily the best photo in the world, but certainly an interesting grab of something we rarely get to see. This photo is actually a cropping of a larger photo that was taken by one of the Richardson brothers who had purchased an airplane in 1925 and was flying around the county taking interesting shots of certain neighborhoods and areas that were building up. I don't know if there was any real intent for why he did it or if he did it just as a hobby, but nonetheless, this is one of the few photos that I've ever seen of the coal tipple that was there for the Northwestern, one where you ran the car straight up the ramp into the loader. This would burn down about 2 years after this photo was taken and be replaced with a concrete model. This, if you know Sheboygan well enough, this would literally have been directly across the street from what is Gussie's Northwestern House restaurant today. We're looking east here. This is another Art Schaefer shot. This is one he would later combine with a different shot to make sort of a panorama of the area. But here he had climbed up on top of the coal tipple and took a shot of the roundhouse with its 2 extended stalls and its 6 regular stalls. This is a shot he took of an Elko switcher on the turntable at the roundhouse after the 2 long stalls had been knocked down. This is an FM switcher on the side. The roundhouse would be to the right of this photograph. Here's a southbound freight being pulled by FTs and 1 F3 just next to the roundhouse heading south. Very common sight in Sheboygan for the early to mid 1940s. This is taken from the Broadway Avenue Bridge, looking north. This is a southbound mail train. About 1932, I believe that I was told this was taken. We'll move ahead here to the bi-level era. This is taken around 1960. This is from Georgia Avenue. This is the crossing at Indiana Avenue. A lot of people have seen this photo, I know, but it's a good representation of the early streamliner era in Sheboygan. The old style crossing gates still requiring an operator to run them. This is standing on top of the old Sheboygan and Fond du Lac right of way, looking northbound. Streamliner coming from the Green Bay area. You'll notice there's a heavyweight diner in the middle of the train, excuse me. This particular photo is one of my favorites. It's sold for $380 on eBay. I was not the one who purchased it, by the way, but nonetheless, you'll notice the second engine in this consist is the E2 that was part of the mixed fleet with the Union Pacific and Southern Pacific for the city of trains. For about 2 years, it served on board on the Northwestern in regular green and yellow. And here it is captured for all time in Sheboygan. This is looking north of Pennsylvania Avenue in Sheboygan, another streamliner coming in. I believe this was taken on a Sunday, it said. It's about 1948 because you can see the replacement bridge for the Sheboygan River just to the far left. And we would get some odd power in this area. A lot of people don't understand that there were Omaha powered trains, and I still do not have a total grasp on why this is, but they would begin at either Manitowoc or Milwaukee. And these are, of course, the Erie belts that were owned by the Omaha line, running through Sheboygan, pulling a passenger train. It's kind of an interesting winter night shot of the standpipe for steam engines right at Pennsylvania Avenue. Again, another Omaha locomotive right across the street from Pennsylvania Avenue, and the freight house is in the background. This is an interesting shot because it's a pretty decent ground level shot taken of the old Virginia Avenue pedestrian walkway that was over the yard. Apparently, at one point in time, a couple of people were killed in accidents trying to cross through the yard while work was going on, and eventually the Northwestern built this walkway to provide a safe route. It would be taken down in, I believe, around 1954 or 56, if I remember right. Another busy shot of a passenger train getting ready to load. You can see how busy the depot yard. The depot yard was known as the Bull Ring. As I understand it, that name came as a result of the number of small steam locomotives that were regularly running cars to and from industry in town. At one particular article from 1922 that I read said that there were 12 steam locomotives, 12 switchers assigned to Sheboygan that summer to handle the workload in town. Yet another shot looking north. Pardon me. 2 passenger trains there. Another shot taken from on the pedestrian walkway. This one I made a little note on here. My son and I were walking through the old grounds of the yard, the depot yard, and we came across this strangely bent telephone pole that had a pile of insulators still on it. It had been broken, but it was laying in a pile of other telephone poles. And so we collected and absconded with a few insulators. But when I got home, I thought, I seem to remember there was a photograph of a strangely bent telephone pole in some of the photos of passenger trains. And sure enough, there was the pole itself that we had found. Exact same curvature still on it today. This is in 1912. This is a National Guard train that started in Manitowoc, and every county had a car full of soldiers getting ready to go over to Fort McCoy in July of 1912 for maneuvers, summer maneuvers. And apparently a lot of people came out to see all the different men from the different counties. I guess they had 14 cars and 3 baggage cars. Quite the long train full of troops. Another interesting, I wish I could get more story on this, but apparently a reefer car broke loose and ran off the rails and crashed into the edge of the depot's awning, and was being propped up by some sticks here. It was later, I guess, re-railed by being hauled back with a team of horses. Interesting shot from under the depot's awning. A shot looking down Pennsylvania Avenue to the east. You can see where the old streetcar tracks used to be, now patched over. This is be about 1950. Passenger train, mail train heading north in the deep snow. This is an interesting shot taken in 1952, not long before the DL-109 that you can see as the second unit was taken out of service. This may very well have been one of its last trips because the frame cracked on it. And here's the end of that train. Here's another northbound. This is taken at Seaman Avenue in Sheboygan, Seaman and Calumet Drive. There's the tail end of that same train. Now we'll move to the downtown and just discuss one other interesting oddity in Sheboygan. We're looking north here. We're standing on the streetcar tracks, I should say, looking north to the 8th Street Bridge. To the right is the headquarters for the Rice Coal Company, and to the left is one of the coal tipples. And you see Indiana Avenue passing ahead of both of those. The Northwestern initially resisted the streetcar's right to put in tracks over their tracks, but eventually a lawsuit took place and the tracks were allowed to be connected. Later on, when the interurban the streetcar and the interurban line would die off in 38 and 40, the Northwestern took over the contract to haul coal across that 8th Street Bridge. And in order to do that, they required the use of the box cabs that had started initially in Chicago. This is one of the few shots of the box cab running on the connector to the old electrical right of way in the street along Indiana Avenue. Again, number 102, doing the same duty. This is an interesting shot that was put on a Sheboygan history group, mostly talking about the Naval Reserve Center that you see at the right and our PCE 880 that served our sailors there. But what I found most interesting is the fact that there's a Northwestern center cab switcher on that bridge, and I needed to do a little more homework on it. And so I looked around and searched out, and I figured that it was probably this class of 44 tonner from Whitcomb. Lighter weight engine to carry a couple of coal cars across the bridge to the northern power plant that was just to the west of 8th Street. That didn't last long into the 40s or 50s, but it was there for a time yet before Edgewater took over all the duties. Again, another GE, this is a GE center cab that was used to switch in Sheboygan. And here we have a set of FTs pulling a freight and breaking off at the south end of the yard onto the Beltline tracks. The Beltline tracks actually went around the yard and allowed a freight train to go directly through town on the new Beltline that went over the river on the west side of town, all the way through to North Avenue and then points north, reconnecting near North Avenue with the passenger line. This is one of the only true interlocking towers we had in Sheboygan, was at the crossing point of the old Sheboygan and Fond du Lac right-of-way and the Milwaukee and the belt line of the Northwestern that was built in 1906. This is an aerial shot of that area, showing the crossing tower in just a little left of center, lower center. But you'll also see Indiana Avenue traveling from top to bottom on the streets there. And the 17th Street actually has a bridge at this point. In the current day, the house that's at the corner of the building that's at the corner of 17th and Indiana is now a Clark gas station, and that whole channel was filled in once the right-of-way was taken up. And now there is a connector track to the left of the tower that connects to the line heading out to Kohler and Sheboygan Falls and Plymouth. certainly a different time. And here we have a grade level train passing underneath Indiana Avenue with the telltale hanging overhead. It's a view from just near the tower. Here's another rather odd shot to see a C628 Alco road unit pushing a plow backwards across the bridge on the Beltline. And what you see at left is the tracks from the Beltline connecting back to the passenger line north of North Avenue in Sheboygan. This is another full-length, long-distance train being led by the DL 109. Quite a common sight on the Lakeshore line. Again, this would be north. This is about where the Pigeon River crossing is. And I close with this one last shot of a passenger train coming in from the north side of town.
Jim Rindt, everybody. Round of applause for those oddities and other interesting angles. Amazing collection you did there. It's
Thank you.
The promotional emails that we sent out about this presentation tonight referred to you guys as photographers. I don't think you took any of those pictures. Is that fair to say, Jim?
That is true. That is true. But they were taken. Some of them were taken by friends of mine who have since passed.
And at least you took them from somebody's collection.
Yes.
So, but wonderful collection of stuff there, Jim. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
Excellent material. And also our next person up, Mike Slater, is going to present some photos here in a moment, not of his taking, but of his collecting. So it's going to be some interesting stuff here. Now I'll just say, just going to check my email here. I did get a note from Tara, our treasurer, that as of this evening, we have a new member in our midst, and probably somebody who is in the crowd tonight. John Lennon of Pewaukee has joined the Wisconsin chapter. Thank you for that, John. Welcome to the chapter. We will send you out a confirmation shortly, within the next couple days, welcoming you officially to the chapter. Anybody else who wishes to, which is you if you're not a member, please just go to our website, www.nrhswis.org for information, and click the join button and join us, please. Members can participate in our trip to Sheboygan coming up here in a couple weeks on the Saturday morning, the 13th of November. We are invited to tour the grounds of the Christopher Farm and Gardens, and specifically J. Christopher's Transportation Museum, the Transportation Museum that houses an astounding collection of railroad dining car china, normally closed to the public. You'll see that in information in our newsletter and in our emails, but you have to be a member to be able to participate in that. So to sign up for that, just you would need to send me an email, and I think everybody knows that my email address is president@nrhswis.org.